Hi, and welcome to About Our Hope, where we talk about God, Jesus, and the reasons for our hope. I am your host, Callie Baker, and I am so grateful that you are here. Let's get into it, you guys. Have you watched the new season of Secret Lives of Mormon Wives? I'll be honest, I have only watched the first episode of season 2, but in this episode, I was honestly shocked when Taylor Frankie Paul, one of the main girls in the whole show, literally perfectly explains the law of chastity and admits that if she would have been keeping the law of chastity, it would have prevented a lot of the hurt that she is now experiencing. Listen to what she says directly to the camera. In our faith, we were taught to wait for the person that we want to marry and end up with. And I feel like obviously if I hadn't been sleeping with him that early on, I don't think I would have been as hurt, and it's why it's a guideline, because it's going to prevent these types of things from happening. I think that we see in this show one example of what pursuing the message that society sends and that society is pushing today of being free and sexual freedom and doing whatever you want. This show is just one example of where that can lead. And while you might see these women on TikTok and they're beautiful and they look like they're just having so much fun and they're famous now, when you actually watch the show, it's interesting because you really do see that many of their personal lives are falling apart. They're dealing with broken relationships and personal pain and lost identity. So if what society is telling us about sexual freedom and sex in general is not true, then what is true? Well, for members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and really for anyone in general, the truth is that if you want to have the best sex life possible over the longest period of time, then the law of chastity is one of your greatest tools. The law of chastity is not about repression and shame and just not having sex, but it is truly about setting you up to have the best sex life possible. According to a study done by the American Psychological Association that studied over 2,000 married individuals, couples who waited until marriage to have sex as opposed to those who started having sex early on in their dating, the couples who waited reported higher relationship satisfaction, better communication, less consideration of divorce, and better sexual quality. So isn't it hilarious that the couples who society and Hollywood mock for being rigid and outdated are actually the ones who have the best sex lives? So would you rather have those consequences, better communication, higher relationship satisfaction, less consideration of divorce, and better sexual quality? Or would you rather have the consequences on the other side of not keeping the law of chastity? We can see just one example of what those consequences are when looking at Taylor Frankie Paul, who literally says in her own words that she did not keep the law of chastity and is now dealing with the consequences. We can look at the consequences in her life. In her situation, she is divorced from her first husband, who she has 2 kids with. She only gets to see those kids 50% of the time now. And then she finds out that her boyfriend, who she has a baby with, was cheating on her. If this alone is not a compelling case on why to keep the law of chastity, I don't know what is. And this is not me attacking or singling out Taylor. I'm only commenting on her because she has shared her life so publicly. I think that it's important for her to know and for you to know that if you are in a position where you have made mistakes or where someone you love has made those mistakes, that the atonement is so real. When the woman taken in adultery is thrown before Jesus, Jesus does not condemn her. He does not shame her. He does not embarrass her. He does lovingly invite her to change. And I just want you to know that Christ's hand is always extended towards you, no matter where you are at or how far you feel like you have fallen. I want to quickly define the law of chastity for you. It is that sexual relations are to be reserved for marriage between a man and a woman. And I think that it's important to note that this is a covenant that we make in the temple. This is not a policy that is going to change. So how does the law of chastity set you up for the best sex life possible? Well, let's start with dating. If your goal is to have casual sex and just get down with everyone, then do not keep the law of chastity. In fact, completely ignore it. But if your goal is a long-term happy marriage based on mutual trust, then the law of chastity is one of your most powerful tools. How so? For starters, it helps you to find someone who your goals align. The type of person who is down for casual sex is not seeking marriage. So if that is what you are looking for is for a marriage, then don't put yourself in this position. The law of chastity also protects you, and I'm not just saying it protects you from STDs, but studies show that narcissists and psychopaths use short-term mating strategies. So a lot of casual sex and a lot of different partners. Now, that doesn't mean that everyone who breaks the law of chastity is a narcissist or a psychopath. It doesn't mean that at all. But it's important to note that people who have these dark personality traits like narcissism, people who are manipulative, people who take joy in other people's suffering, that the way they are going to approach dating is in these short-term mating strategies. So by keeping the law of chastity, this is just another way to protect you from ending up in one of these relationships long term. Another thing that is so important to note with dating is that saying no to sexual advances while you are dating is going to make you more attractive to the right person. We see all of these messages from society that just push, especially women, towards promiscuity. And it makes you think that flaunting yourself publicly or privately is going to be the way that men are going to want to be with you. And yes, there are going to be men who do want that and are attracted to that. But like I said, if your goal is marriage, then saying no is going to actually make you more attractive to the type of person you want to marry. And there's one really interesting way that this works that I hadn't thought of before that I want to share with you. If you think about this really awesome stand-up guy that you do want to marry, what does he want in a wife? Well, one of the things that he wants is he wants to know that he can trust her to stay faithful once you are married. He wants to know that his wife has the self-control to say no to temptation, to say no to any sexual advances that might come outside of the marriage once they are married. And so one way that he can see that is if you are able to say no before marriage. And now this doesn't put all the pressure on women to say no, and this doesn't exclude men from keeping the law of chastity. It's not that at all. But I think that this just makes so much sense logically and psychologically. So for all of the girls out there, do not think that you holding to high standards is going to make you less attractive or less desirable, because while it might make you less desirable to the type of men who are looking to just get down with everybody, is actually going to be one of the things that makes you more attractive to the right kind of guy. And this isn't to say that if you have made mistakes that none of this is going to be able to apply for you. This podcast is still for you, even if you're in that position. You can decide to start new today. Jesus Christ can make you pure and he can make you clean and he can forgive you completely. And if you go through that repentance process and you truly are a new person in Christ, then your future spouse is not going to see any of that past. The right kind of person will not see or care about that past when you are a truly new person in Jesus Christ. Okay, let's move on to the next phase. Let's say that you are going to get engaged. Well, why not live together first? Why not just live together and not get married at all? After all, marriage is just a piece of paper and just a construct of the patriarchy, right? Wrong. Marriage is so much more than a piece of paper. Marriage is a vow, a covenant, even, in front of God or whatever you deem as holy, in front of the state, in front of your friends and family, in front of your community. And you might think that your love is different, that your love is so strong, but if your love is so strong, why would you not be willing to commit to each other completely? What is the message you are sending by living together and not being willing to get married? You might think that the message you're sending is that you're trying it out, you're testing it out. With a commitment as big as marriage, where you're going to be committed for your whole life, why would you not want to test that out first? But the thing is, in reality, the message that you are sending is you'll do for now. You'll do for now. But if someone better comes along, I reserve the right to leave, and I am going to grant you that same right and that same opportunity. Do you see how this is a much more conditional love? Society wants to tell you that it's empowering. It's empowering to not need marriage. But nothing is more empowering than when someone is willing to commit to you completely with no conditions attached. When they are willing to commit to you forever. Nothing is more stabilizing and regulating. I also want to address, okay, you're engaged, you know that you're going to get married, you're not living together, but why wait? Why wait to have sex? This goes back to what we just talked about earlier, because you want your spouse to be able to say no. You want someone who has the self-control to say no to temptation so that they can say no in the future as well. Because the law of chastity doesn't stop once you are married. So now let's talk about marriage. You have an obligation to your spouse and to yourself once you are married to guard your heart. Guard your heart from the temptations that could enter. And it's so easy to think that this would never happen to me, that I am not the type of person who does that sort of thing. But these things happen little by little. Don't put yourself in situations, even in a small way, where temptation can enter. And now when you're married, this is when I'm telling you, you are set up for the best sex life possible. And I am not in any way qualified to talk to you about that specifically, but I do want to give you a couple of resources that I love. The first is a podcast from The Blonde Apologist. It is called Sexual Theology with Tammy Hill. Go give that a listen. Tammy Hill is a member of the church, and so she looks at sexual theology from a Latter-day Saint perspective, and it is really awesome. The other resource I would give you is a book called The Proper Care and Feeding of Husbands by Dr. Laura. Now, she is not a member of the church, but she is Christian, and I just love her perspective and her take on things. Now, she is super straightforward and hard-hitting, so she might not be a good fit for anybody, but this book was very helpful for me, and I think that it is going to be my new bridal shower present. So if you are married or you are preparing for marriage, go check those out. One other aspect of the law of chastity that I want to briefly touch on is pornography. This is another thing that society wants to make seem like it is not a big deal and like it is casual. This is something else we see on Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. Some of the husbands are admittedly struggling with pornography. So I just want to share with you a few studies just to put it in perspective that this is something that shouldn't be casual in our culture. Men who consume a lot of porn report higher rates of erectile dysfunction. Viewing pornography leads to an increased risk of depression, anxiety, body image issues, and suicide. And those who consumed a lot of pornography were more likely to reenact violent sexual scripts. I also want to say here that I know that one of the top Google searches when it comes to pornography is actually how to stop. So if that is the position you are in, one resource that I want to point you to is an episode of The Diary of the CEO with Jordan Peterson. They talk a lot about pornography here and kind of go through the foundations of how to stop. So that is a really good resource, and know that, again, the atonement of Christ is always there for you. You can be made clean and you can be made new. Porn, at the end of the day, is a cheap counterfeit for the real thing. It promises pleasure, but in the end, it delivers emptiness. Okay, so now for a dramatic change of topic for you. I promised on Instagram that I would give a little bit of my dating advice, which I feel like is applicable to this episode. But the first thing that I would say is be true to who you are, which sounds so cheesy, but is actually so real. Do not try to pretend to be the type of person that you think the person you're dating would want. All that's going to do is delay the heartbreak. But if you are upfront about who you are and you are true to yourself, then it is going to make it so that you can quickly find a person who you align with. Kind of along those same lines, decide what your values are. Now, I know that at least when I was dating, I was very open to what my life could look like, because a lot of those questions are unanswered before you are married. But the things that you can decide for sure are what your values are. How committed do you want to be to religion? Do you want to be a stay-at-home mom? Do you want to work? How close do you want to live to family? How often do you want to see your family? Do you care about your health? How seriously do you take that? These things will not only help you know more of who you are, but they will help you to find someone who you align with. And if you align with someone on the bigger aspects of life, the bigger worldview, politics, religion, then you are going to save yourself so much conflict and heartache in that marriage, because you aren't going to have to fight about the big stuff. For me and my husband, we don't fight about the things that are the most important to us. Generally, if we are fighting or arguing, it is because of a miscommunication. So decide what your values are and then be true to those and be upfront about it. If you want to be a stay-at-home mom, don't feel like you have to hide that for any reason, because if you do, it's going to make you less likely to find someone who also wants that. The next thing that I would say is take care of yourself. Take care of yourself physically. Go to the gym, exercise, drink a lot of water, eat healthy. All these things are going to help your physical appearance. And while you don't need to worry about or stress about being a Marilyn Monroe 10, there is a lot of value in life in general, and especially in dating, to try to be closer to your own personal 10. Literally just take care of yourself. Get ready for the day. Put on a cute outfit. The way that you present yourself is so important in dating. And while looks are absolutely not everything, being attracted to your partner is extremely important. So make yourself attractive. And then the last thing I would say, which will come at no surprise at the end of this episode, is do not have sex before you are married. Hold strong to your values. Know that you are not a prude, you are not outdated, but that you will find a guy, guys, you will find a girl who really values that, and that you can build a relationship on so much mutual trust. And that, like I said, that will literally make you more attractive to the right person. Okay, to wrap this all up, in conclusion, the law of chastity is not about denial. It is about divine design. The law of chastity isn't about repression. It's about joy. It's about the best sex life possible, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and eternally. Wouldn't it make sense that if God is the God of the universe, that the laws that he has put into place for us would make sense on all fronts? That they wouldn't just make sense for members of the church, but that they would make sense scientifically, logically, psychologically, emotionally, mentally. And we have so much data that backs up God's design for sex and for chastity. Trust in that. Trust in him. Trust in who he has created you to be. Trust that God intends the absolute best for you in this life and throughout eternity. The law of chastity is not something that restricts us and restricts our personal freedom, but it is instead actually the thing that sets us free in the long run, that sets us up, like that study said, for a better sexual quality and a better relationship overall in the future. I am truly so grateful for a God that has given us laws and has given us commandments to help aid us to have the best life possible and to eventually return to live with him. All right, so I'll be honest, and maybe it's obvious because it has taken me so long to get this episode out. This was a really hard one to figure out the right way to present it and the right way to communicate it. So as always, I just want to say that I am not an expert on these things. I am not a scholar. I am not literally none of that. These are just some thoughts that I have for you. So please take it with a grain of salt. Please use discernment on what is right for you. And please give me grace if something that I said came across the wrong way or anything like that. I am so grateful to you for being here. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. I appreciate it so much. Always feel free to reach out to me. I love to hear your comments and responses to all the things. Thanks again, and I will see you later.